Representative Ableser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wish to explain my vote?
Please proceed.
Mr. Chair, members, I have worked on many campaigns defeating this exact language that came from Ward Connolly. Ward Connolly is a longtime California lobbyist and a right-wing race activist. He started out with ambitions, plans to target 11 states with these civil rights initiatives. Failed, obviously, to get it on the ballot here in Arizona because of his employment of felons and the amount of fraud it took to actually get this piece of hateful legislation on the ballot. Because of his inability to do so, because the good voters in Arizona saw through his tactics, he's resorted to other avenues, and that's through a referendum from the ballot to the legislature. I would like to share a little bit of information about the author of this legislation, Mr. Ward Connolly. Mr. Ward Connolly, he pushes his civil rights initiatives with rhetoric about working towards a colorblind society, though he has personally raked in millions of dollars of as the right-wing face of the efforts to bankroll his equal opportunity programs. He uses 2 tax-exempt charitable nonprofit programs aimed, and Connolly has lined his own pockets with over $7.6 million in profits from 1997 to the mid-2006.
Point of order,
Mr. Former Speaker.
Point of order. This is not an explanation of vote. It actually is an attack on an individual, which is not appropriate at this time. So I would ask the chair to instruct Mr. Ableser to stay on point as to the explanation of his vote.
Mr. Chair, I would argue that my comments upon this legislation which has occurred all over the country, are consistent with the one theme behind it, and that is Mr. Ward Connolly.
Mr. Ableser, I would rule that your comments about the personal integrity of a person are inappropriate. If you want to talk about the bill and the fact that he may have been involved in that, you may, but you need to make certain that you do not impugn any person, as well as obviously members of this body. So with that instruction, you may proceed.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, or Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, for clarification, I don't believe I'm impugning someone if they're not here.
Well, Mr. Ableser, you can impugn someone whether they're present or not. And all I'm saying to you is that to make those sorts of accusations is inappropriate argument or explanation, but please proceed to explain your vote.
Okay. Just again for more clarification, Mr. Chair, if I use a quote from Mr. Connolly where he says, "God bless the KKK," am I impugning him?
If that's an accurate quote, it would not be. You may proceed.
That's an accurate quote. Should I cite it in that case?
You may.
Okay. Members, thank you again, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, for the equal treatment. Members, I believe that this bill is ill-prescribed, it's ill-willed, and it's a product of this post-neo-colonial mindset that has penetrated so many minds, and from a certain perspective, and it's very troubling. And the main person, Mr. Connolly, who from his own tax-exempt corporations makes over $500,000, and I don't believe that's impugning. That's cited from his website. He says how much money he makes, and I think that shows the true focus of what is happening. It's devised to divide us. It's devised to bring out our internal prejudices and feelings about this issue, and to create a very difficult relationship amongst us as members. Mr. Connolly highlights on his website.
Representative Wires.
Point of order, Mr. Pro Tem. We're right back where we started 3 minutes ago. This is not an explanation of vote. It actually is an attack on an individual, and I know you cannot impugn when somebody's not here, but nonetheless, I think all of us would appreciate on tact as to the point as to your explanation of your no.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, if I'm not mistaken, members said yesterday about a certain president who went out and made intentions about his motivation going on a date night with his wife when he was president of the United States, and they've made attacks at him. So I don't understand what the contradiction is here.
Yes, Representative Wires.
This is going to turn into a long night, and I think his 5 minutes are pretty much up. With that, I never mentioned anybody. I simply said a trip from D.C. to New York for dinner and theater would be more than enough to be able to handle any stamps. Didn't mention anybody. And with that, if we could just get on with this vote so we can all get home tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Ableser, if you could just speak to the bill itself and not worry about any other person, that would be productive.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, may I ask a question? Since this individual I'm discussing, he actually testified in committee on this, and since his testimony is relevant to this bill, shouldn't I be able to refute his testimony?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The motivations of the actions behind this type of legislation are difficult to see, especially since they come from so many different demographics, and they present with a brushstroke of equality. And the quotes of Dr. Martin Luther King about having judged someone by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin are used inappropriately. And Dr. King has spent his whole life, and the legacy of his life thereafter, those that have carried his mantle, to fight for the basic premise that if you start a race and one person has a 300-year lead, what type of magic do we need to catch that person up? We are on an uneven playing field, and this bill directly undermines the efforts of many great presidents that I've mentioned before, President Nixon, President Eisenhower, and President H.W. Bush. All three great leaders would be dismayed by the actions of this type of legislation. And so, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker Pro Tem and members, I've mentioned that before we can move past race, we must first take an account of it. And this country has never done that. We have never taken a true account of the ill effects of what a socially constructed symbol, that is race, that was devised in this country
30 seconds, Mr. Ableser.
has achieved. And so I would hope that members today would have the foresight to try to eliminate the long-term effects of what race did to this country and to individuals. Thank you for your time and your jurisprudence.
And you vote?
I vote no.
Representative Ableser votes nay.